The Browns, they're putrid. They're the worst team in the NFL.
The 2024 season is over.
Lamar Jackson can't win the playoffs. He'll win a third MVP, though, so that's great.
Drew Sample is the most important piece of the Bengals offense next year.
Go Joe Burrow. He deserves to be MVP. I wish he was the Browns quarterback. Kind of mean that.
If you're looking for the most reactionary, silly, and unserious show on the internet, then you're home. Live from Hamilton, Ohio, it's Off the Bench by Chatterbox Sports on 1410 ESPN Radio.
Right, and we are off and rolling here on a Wednesday. This is Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. Good morning, everybody, and welcome in 1410 ESPN Radio in Dayton, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube. We welcome you in. Justin Kinner. Casey McAllister's back. He's in the producer chair. Casey, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, guys. It's been a while.
It's great to see you, Casey.
Yeah, good to see you guys.
I want to give everybody a little background here. We've been discussing it, but Casey has one of his old cars out in the parking lot, and he's had it there for it's seemingly 6 months now.
It's getting there.
The car is completely covered in snow. There is legitimately no way to dig that car out at this point. That car is there. Honestly, I think it would be a fun social experiment to somehow claw our way into that car and spend the night in it.
Oh, boy.
I think that would be very, very fun.
Yeah, Reed said, hey, guys, there's a lot of snow coming. Casey's car is stuck in the parking lot. If we want to move that this week before the snow, maybe it might be our last chance for a while. And I think just collectively, the three of us were like, well, we haven't moved it for the previous 4 months, so what's a little snow going to hurt?
No, and here's the best part. I think it's supposed to snow some more.
It is. I saw that as well.
Let's see. I'm getting the weather app here. Not an official weather report, but Friday we're supposed to get about 2 to 3 more inches.
Whoopee.
Casey, is there a little bit of a chance that the windshield caves in?
No.
Non-zero.
Non-zero, you'd have to say, right?
I don't know about that, but the thing about it is if there was anyone that wanted to move my car, that's not myself, they wouldn't be able to. So it's actually helping me both ways. So, yeah, we're going to take care of that eventually. That car will eventually get moved, or I'll just have someone buy it for like $500 and get rid of it. Haven't decided yet, but yeah, it's been a while. It's certainly been like 2.5 months, which is absurd, but
you tried your best.
Tried my best. I'm trying my best here. It's just it costs like $5,000 to get it towed where I need it to be towed, and that's just absurd.
Yeah, I get it.
I would love to see the old Kelly Blue Book value on that old baby.
I would love. Show me the Carfax. Show me
the car.
Here's a fact. It's buried. It's buried in snow. Come pick it up.
All right. Well, this is again Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. Casey, glad you are back in studio, and the other guy's back in studio as well. Mr. Elliot Rearing, ladies and gentlemen. Elliot, good morning. How are you, sir?
Ooh, thanks for the clap.
You got from down the hill. I see.
So I told Jacob this. I could get down. We had somebody bring up a snow plow and kind of dig our way out a little bit. The issue is getting back up. So I can get down the hill. Getting back up the hill is going to be a problem. So we'll see if we're going to be able to rectify that at some point later this afternoon. But it could be a frustrating day, to say the least. We'll see if we're able to. The Chevy Impala had this issue a couple times when, obviously, we've had snow in the past couple of years. Chevy Impala was unable to make it. Chevy Impala had to stay down street level, could not climb the hill into our driveway. I think the new car is going to be able to.
Optimistic?
I'm optimistic.
That's
I'm hopeful.
good.
I'm hopeful.
That's good.
Jacob, you're back in studio as well. I know you were dreading having to go out and the manual labor of having to shovel your way out of your house and your driveway, but I see you did the hard work as well.
I was saved by a good Samaritan. I got about a third of the way through shoveling my driveway, and then shout out to my lovely neighbor Ernie. Old guy Ernie lives across the street, and he came over with the biggest behemoth of a snowplow you've ever seen in suburban Ohio, and he went and took care of the rest of my driveway in about 65 seconds. So big time shout out to Ernie. Saved me about 2 hours of work shoveling the rest of my driveway.
Well, I know there's probably Well, I got a new snowblower for Christmas, so I knocked out my driveway, my sidewalk, and I'm like, well, I'm going to be nice and help a neighbor. did the one neighbor's house. Then the other neighbor came out and asked if I could do her house. I did her house. Then I'm like, okay, at some point I got to be rude to tell someone to do your own damn driveway. But I feel like I did my good deed for the month. And I'm glad I checked it off so early in the month too, because now I could just take the rest of the month off and not have to be nice to anybody. But yeah, at a certain point, I was no longer excited about using the new Christmas gift. But definitely came in handy.
Yeah, we went out yesterday. When we got out yesterday, late in the afternoon, around 5 o'clock, I was able to drive away and get groceries or whatever. My dad's like, all right, go to Home Depot and get some salt and probably get a shovel too. We're gonna need another shovel. I get there. What does the sign say right on the door when I enter Home Depot? No salt, no shovels. They've ran out. I went to Kroger's. I went to 3 different places. Nobody's got any salt. Nobody's got any shovels. Nobody's got any salt. So it's a dire situation for the Rearing household right at this moment. But we're gonna fight it. We're gonna fight the fight.
Speaking of fights, I see you are a Kroger's guy. Not Kroger.
Yep. There's an S. Yep, there's an S.
I'm not.
And if anybody wants to fight,
I do it too.
And if
I don't. I'm not.
If anybody wants to fight me on it, that's fine. You can do so. But it is Kroger's with an S. With an S. Yeah.
That's worse than Casey's various mispronunciations.
No, it's not. What's your thing with he calls the Kansas City Chiefs the Kansas Chiefs.
Texas Roadhouse is just Texas. That's the craziest one.
Don't make me laugh because I'm gonna call.
Well, I like saying I'm going down to Texas. Get me a nice old juicy steak.
I'm also battling an illness, so gotta help me.
We're fighting today, folks.
So you go to, so I've heard this a lot as well. When I went to the Rose Bowl, a lot of Oregon fans kept saying, "Oh yeah, we got Ohio tomorrow. We're playing Ohio tomorrow." And I noticed a lot of people do that with Ohio State. They just call them Ohio. And I'm like, hold on, we are not the Bobcats. Okay, let's just get that. Yes, we got to distinguish that. People, it is interesting nonetheless. But all right, I guess we should talk sports. We got a good sports show lined up for you guys today.
Sure.
Zach Taylor, should he keep his job? I don't know if we'll do that debate today. I think we might save that for later.
Well,
I think we probably will.
I think unfortunately we're going to have to do it.
We're going to be doing that today
with one of our guests.
Speaking of guests, we'll be talking Bearcats coming up here in just a little bit. Keegan Nicholson again with Bearcat Journal. The Bearcats coming off of a loss last night. Obviously, their head coach, Wes Miller, had some interesting things to say in the postgame. We'll react to that. Former Bearcat head coach, Cronin, had some very interesting things to say after another loss for UCLA. But he's not to blame. Don't worry. You can blame a lot of people. Do not blame Coach Cronin. And he made that very, very clear. So we got that coming up. We'll talk Notre Dame, Penn State, college football playoffs. Mike Golick Jr. Later on in the program as well at top of the hour. So we'll get to that. And then we got to find something to talk about to fill the rest of the show. And I'm sure we'll do that, right? I think we could do that.
I think we can do that.
Yeah. So before we go any further, though, let's send it to our guy, Elliot. We have Elliot's headlines.
Oh.
Score updates, breaking news, local and national headlines. Whatever's going on in the world of sports, Elliot has you covered. Off the Bench brings you Elliot's headlines.
Yes. Whistle? No whistle.
You gotta remind me of these things before we start.
And I think the bit is going to keep going until the sun burns out. So
Okay.
we're just going to let it ride.
Okay.
College basketball news yesterday. The Bearcats, they've lost again. And this was the most notable one. Again, we're going to talk about it in about 15 minutes with Keegan Nicholson. But 68-48 on the road at Baylor. They were never in this game. It was over from the jump. And now there are a lot of questions. I wasn't concerned after Arizona. I'm concerned now. It's getting bad, and it's getting bad pretty quickly. The other team in Cincinnati, Xavier, they lose 82-72 to St. John's. Zach Freeman did all he could do, 22 points, 8 for 18. From the floor. St. John's able to get it done on the road against Xavier. Xavier also not starting this season out hot. The two Cincinnati teams, tough. Very, very tough to start the year. College basketball that's not in Cincinnati. Duke, number 4 Duke, they beat Pittsburgh by 30 points last night. Tennessee, the number 1 team in the country, they lose their first game of the year, 73-43 in Florida. So how about that? The number 8 team in the country, the Florida Gators, take down the number 1 team by 30 at home. Number 2, Auburn, they get past Texas barely by 5 points, 5-point victory there on the road. Iowa State, 82-59 victory over Utah. That was at home. Number 3 ranked Iowa State. Number 6 ranked Kentucky. They lose a conference game, their first conference loss to Georgia. Georgia's now 13-2 on the season. 82-69 win there. And Marquette, they take care of Georgetown 74-66. That's Georgetown's first loss in the Big East. Marquette remains perfect. West Virginia, 21st ranked West Virginia, they lose at home to Arizona. Arizona stays a little bit hot now, 3-0 in the Big 12. Mississippi State, 14th ranked. I can't believe how many ranked teams in the SEC there
It's
are.
preposterous.
Unbelievable. They beat Vanderbilt. They were 13-2 on the year. They lose 76-64 at home. And obviously, this is a bigger one. Michigan, 24th ranked Michigan, 94-75 win in UCLA, at UCLA, 22 ranked UCLA. So Mick Cronin, I think he's a little upset. Do you want to run that one now, Kenny, or do you want to wait for that one?
We'll get to that one before Keegan, before we get to him coming up here shortly.
Moving on from there, I guess we'll just jump around here. ESPN, we have some of the news coming from there. You have the Cowboys denying Mike McCarthy to interview for the Bears job. So I guess he's just trapped. He's going to be trapped in Dallas until Jerry Jones wants to do something with him.
That comes about 24 hours after Jerry Jones says, if you want to interview and leave Dallas, you can.
Yep.
So kind of funny in that sense.
Justin Verlander, he signs a 1-year deal with the Giants. That's going to be fun to deal with on opening day.
Yeah.
I'm very excited to see that. And moving to the NBA, scores from last night. Celtics over the Nuggets, 118-106. Warriors fall at home again, this time to the Heat, 114-98. The Hawks, they win on a 50-foot buzzer beater, 124-121. They beat the Jazz, who are helpless this season. Zion returned, seemingly for the first time in forever last night. They lose, the Pelicans, that is, 104-97. The Pelicans are 7-30 on the season. Mavericks take care of the Lakers at home, 118-97. And then you have LeBron James in that game. I don't know who saw this highlight. One of the cooler dunks probably of his entire career at age 40. At age 40.
We're officially done with the Jordan switching hands layup now. It's the LeBron switching hands windmill dunk.
That's correct. It was pretty cool to see. Also of note, J.J. Redick said after the game his family had to be evacuated due to the fires that are going on out there on the West Coast. So prayers up to everybody out there dealing with that stuff. That's absolutely horrible. But outside of that, those are your headlines.
There were a couple other NFL pieces of news, one that doesn't necessarily affect the Bengals but could affect the fans a little bit. The Niners fired defensive coordinator Nick Sorensen. They're going to have an opening in 2025. And Dan Orlovsky very quickly threw out Lou Anarumo's name for that position.
I saw that.
Lou Anarumo, I said right as soon as we fired him that he'll be pretty highly sought after on the defensive coordinator market, especially for teams that consider themselves contenders with some talent on that side of the ball. Niners certainly fall under that umbrella. So we'll see what happens there. If Lou goes to the San Francisco 49ers with some of the talent they have on that side of the football, I think he could be coaching a pretty dang good defense. So it might be tough to watch for Bengals fans. But in terms of that opening in Cincinnati, the Bengals have 2 interviews set up. Yesterday, they interviewed Patrick Graham, the Raiders defensive coordinator. And then today, they're planning on interviewing Patriots defensive coordinator DeMarcus Covington. The interesting part about the Patrick Graham interview, he was also involved in some head coaching searches so far this offseason and last offseason. So a very highly thought of defensive coordinator in this league. But the Raiders fired Antonio Pierce as well, their head coach, who was their linebackers coach beforehand. And if you remember when the Bengals fired their position coaches, one of the coaches they let go was the linebackers coach. So a potential reunion in Cincinnati for Patrick Graham and maybe Antonio Pierce as the linebackers coach. I don't know, just interesting to look at as the Bengals are trying to fill out this roster. And I know that's something a lot of fans are circling because we've talked about it for a while. How cool would it be to have Max Crosby in stripes?
Yeah,
and if you get the 2 coaches that he loves most, maybe that cracks that door open a little bit. I'm not saying that's something the Bengals are going to do, but I've been in the camp that that's 100% impossible for a while. But if you get Patrick Graham and Antonio Pierce, I don't know, maybe it's a possibility.
Yeah, one thing that to feed off of that Antonio Pierce being fired, what's making its rounds right now is, I guess, on Instagram, the post that showed that Antonio Pierce was fired, Patrick Mahomes apparently liked it. So you know how we do here. You know, we follow the activity of these athletes on social media, and we try to read.
I thought he'd be upset that Antonio Pierce was fired. Antonio Pierce, not a very good coach.
Yeah, none. But so
I think it was
again,
it was the Kermit dolls.
Yeah, probably.
So if there's already, I mean, look, that would add to that rivalry between the Bengals and Chiefs, between the Bengals and Chiefs. If a coach that Patrick Mahomes hates ends up going to Cincinnati, in some capacity,
sure.
wouldn't be the end of the world. Would definitely add an extra layer to that, nonetheless. College football news: Ashton Jeanty, no surprise here. He declares for the NFL draft. At one point, when I thought the Browns were going to be picking in that 7 to 10 range, I thought that was something they would kick the tires on if they were looking to add pieces to help them win. Now, obviously, that changes with them having the number 2 pick. What are the chances we see Ashton Jeanty go in the top 10 in the first round? Is that a possibility, or do you think teams are kind of were they kind of scared off a bit after the lack of great performance that he had against Penn State?
I don't think so. I think most people recognize what he was going up against in Penn State with a less than stellar offensive line against one of the best defensive lines in all of college football, and he still was able to scratch and claw for 100 yards. So I don't think that game hurt his draft stock at all. I've been pretty locked in on one spot and in the top 15 for Jeanty, and I don't think he's going to go top 10, though that definitely is a possibility. We've seen running backs get taken higher than their projection many, many times because people don't know how to gauge running backs in the draft. The value for the position doesn't match an elite player. We saw it with Jahmyr Gibbs. He was projected to the Bengals in most mock drafts in the mid-teens, and he ended up going much earlier to the Lions. So having a guy like Jeanty on the board, he could certainly go top 10. But what I have circled for him right now is number 12. I think he's going back home to Dallas, and he's going to be the Cowboys running back of the future.
Would be fun. That's a Dallas. It's such a Dallas.
Such a Dallas pick. You have a terrible defense. You just paid your quarterback $60 million. You just paid CD $50 plus. You have to figure out how to pay Micah. Yeah, let's draft a running back.
Other news, too, this time out of Major League Baseball, former Cincinnati Red Michael Lorenzen signs a 1-year, $7 million deal with the Kansas City Royals. When that was posted yesterday, I saw some Reds fans, a little upset that the Reds didn't kick the tires on Michael Lorenzen. Where would you guys have been had there been a reunification between those two?
I think pitching depth definitely matters, but I think we've spent enough money on MLB talent so far, and we're at a good spot with the MLB pitching. I know a lot of people think we need more pitching depth, and I definitely think it would help, but I think the money on Lorenzen to be a depth piece probably doesn't make sense for the Reds.
If he wanted to be a reliever, he could come out here and be a reliever if he wanted to, but he doesn't want to, so I would have been out on that one.
You remember before Shohei Ohtani when pitchers, played out of the field and pitched and were dominant? Remember when we all used to do the whole, man, Michael Lorenzen is such a great hitter for a pitcher? Those were the days. Those were some cute memories.
He had a couple games or maybe not games, a couple innings in the outfield.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. He had a great catch along the wall in one game, I remember.
The Michael Lorenzen
he was ahead of his time.
He was.
He was like when pitchers still hit in the NL, like that's the guy you wanted.
Yeah.
That's the guy you wanted. But now it's obviously he doesn't hit anymore.
He's jacked, too. He's got that going for him. He never uses a barbell.
Really?
He's dumbbell guy.
How about that?
Yeah.
Mikey biceps.
All right, we'll step away for a few moments. More off the bench when we come back. Wes Miller, head coach of the Bearcats, had some interesting comments following the Bearcats' loss last night. We'll talk about that. Plus, former Bearcat coach Mick Cronin goes off in his postgame after UCLA's tough loss, and that's been making its rounds throughout the day. We'll get to that before we're joined by, again, Keegan Nicholson, again, with Bearcat Journal coming up around the corner as well. More off the bench when we come back. And we are back. This is Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. Justin Kinner, Elliot Rearing, Jacob Tisdett with you here. We do have Casey McAllister back in studio, back in the producer chair today. The guys were able to fight through the elements, fight through the piles and mounds of snow, basically locking them in place the last couple of days. But everyone's back at it, ready to go here this week again. Happy Wednesday, everybody. So, all right, we'll talk college football coming up more here in a little bit. Mike Golick Jr., we'll chat with him about Notre Dame, Penn State, Ohio State, Texas. Talked about all the snow here, but apparently there's a lot of snow heading towards Dallas. And there was talks of potentially moving that game. I think the momentum has slowed down on that, luckily. But we'll get to more of that coming up later on. But we'll send it to our guy, Elliot. Elliot, little Bearcats talk as we're joined by Keegan here with Bearcat Journal. I know things aren't as smooth right now with the Bearcats as what it was to start the season, no doubt.
Yeah, and listen, I had to bring on an expert, so we now welcome on a very special guest, maybe the most special we've ever had on the program, Keegan Nickerson, Bearcat Journal, reporter, writer, extravaganza. He's probably the best in the business. Listen, Keegan, I'm going to try to be positive. I texted you this. This is going to be a very positive show. The issue is I wrote out all my questions today, and I have 0 positive questions. None of them. So I'm going to try my best, and we're going to have some fun. We're going to have some fun on this Bearcat extravaganza. So they've dropped 3 in a row. They're 0-3 to start conference play. Disappointment in the minds of the fan base, I think, would be an understatement at this very second. But you've been to the press conferences. You've been around the team, I think, more than the average fan. As of this second, and obviously they're coming back from Baylor, what are the vibes, do you think, right now in the locker room for the Bearcats? 0-3 to start conference play.
A lack of confidence. And I think Wes said that after the game when he was talking to Dan and Terry, basically his first words after the game. It was, this team lost the confidence that they had a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And you think about the vibes for the fan base and looking at where this team could be after the Xavier win, after the Dayton win, going back to the Ohio State charity win, which I know it's a charity game, but it's still Ohio State's a decent team. You beat them by like 30. The first game with this group together, those are gone. I mean, those vibes are completely gone. I mean, there were visions of like a Sweet 16 appearance and maybe, ball goes your way a couple times. You can get into the Elite Eight, the amount of talent that was on this team. And now it feels worse than last year. I mean, they were 1-2 at this point last year in Big 12 play with a win at BYU and a loss at Texas and Baylor. And I think those 2 losses were a combined 3 points. So they're really, really low. And there's got to be some changes, especially offensively. The only issue is where do you start? Because if you fix the offense, you have to fix the bench. And if you fix the bench, you have to fix the free throw shooting. And I can't remember the last coach at Cincinnati that was able to fix the free throw shooting.
Yeah, I got a question about that because nothing upsets me more than the free throws. But last night it felt like the first time they rolled over a little bit. It seemed like in the second half it was just a quit. And I don't blame them. I mean, at this point, they couldn't hit water if they fell out of a boat. From 3-point land, I know what's going to happen, and it's going to be a brick. Jizzle, I say this with love and respect. Talent-wise, he has some of the most raw talent that we have on this roster, and I think that's part of the disappointment this year too, more so than last year, is because the roster, I felt like it improved. I felt like it majorly took a step up, and now you're seeing it. You're looking at 0-3, 0-4 on Saturday potentially. It's just a disaster. Dylan Mitchell 30 minutes last night, didn't score a point. Seamoss 2 for 7, Jizzle 2 for 11. We know the talent's there, and you mentioned the offense. Why is it so bad? I'm not like some basketball expert. I don't know about the scheme and what we should be running offensively. But it feels like with the talent we have, there should be more answers than we're getting on the floor.
Yeah, they just aren't executing Wes Miller's offense correctly. I mean, there was multiple plays, and he brought it up after the game where, Aziz Bandago sets a screen at the top and then rolls down towards the basket, and he's open for like an easy 2. 90% of the time, he either makes this or he gets fouled.
Yeah. And
it was like 2 or 3 times they just don't get him the ball. And, I mean, Wes said there wasn't a single satisfactory offensive possession in the first half where, they drive inside into the paint and then kick it out for a 3. He didn't see a single one in the entire first half. It does, a lot of it comes down to making shots and the inability to make shots. I think in Baylor, there weren't a ton of open shots that they got, and I think that was probably the worst offensive game that they've had. Obviously, I mean, it was the first time they scored less than 50 points since 2023 in the AAC tournament when they got steamrolled by Houston. And there's players on this team where it's their job to make jump shots, and that's Seamus Lukosius, and that's Tyler Betsy. I think Tyler Betsy has a combined 3 points, maybe 2 points in the past 3 games. And the bench trio of him, Connor Hickman, and Arrington Page have scored a combined 8 points in the last 3 games. You are not going to make a run in Big 12 play, and you are not going to beat Big 12 teams when you don't have a reliable bench that can take some pressure off of your starters. So that trickles down to the confidence thing of your starters where they feel they have to make every shot, and then when they don't, their confidence dips, and then they're missing bad shots. So it's so much that they have to get figured out, and it's really happening at the worst time. It feels like, and I said this to Chad, my boss, I said, it feels like the entire team is doing what Victor Locken did last year, where you kind of just disappear and you fall off the face of the earth. But this cannot happen. This is the most talented team that Wes Miller has had. They had all the preseason expectations, and now it's all just going by the wayside.
I've been looking everywhere and I can't find Connor Hickman. And I like it's coming into the year. I thought that was a name that we could rely on. It's I mean, no disrespect. It's a major step up when you get to the Big 12. I get it, but he's been a complete non-factor this season. You've mentioned the issues with the bench. I mean, are we going to start seeing CJ Frederick soon? Because they have to have somebody on the roster that can make a 3-point jump shot consistently, at least a little bit. Do we see a little bit more CJ Frederick?
I think you will see a little bit more. I don't think it'll be 20 minutes a game. In defense of Connor Hickman, he has been playing banged up. He's been walking around in a boot. I think it's a left foot issue with him that he's kind of been playing through. Might have a few other things going on as well. So I give him a little bit of a pass, even though I still think you should be able to make some open shots when you get them, just seeing how you shot at Bradley the last 3 seasons. Where I can't give a pass is to Tyler Betsy, a highly rated kid out of Connecticut, one of their highest rated recruits in the past, I think, like 10 seasons or something like that.
Yeah.
And he's missed his last 7 threes that he's taken. He's on the floor to make threes. He's on the floor to make shots. He's not a lockdown defender by any means. I think at times the best defense he's played is basically holding his water and just not absolutely caving. So he has to make shots. Like, this team, the plan didn't come along and say, you know what, we'll be okay if Tyler Betsy doesn't make shots. We'll be okay if Connor Hickman doesn't make shots. Like, they're supposed to supplement the offense, and that's not happening.
One of the things that you mentioned earlier, and I can't stomach, these mental mistakes have been an ongoing problem, I feel like, under Wes Miller. Turnovers have increased the past 3 games. Free throws, truly, no joke. The free throw, I watch Bearcats games, and I might turn off the TV if I have to see Dylan Mitchell go to the free throw line. He just doesn't make free throws. And I'm not the most athletic person in the world, obviously. I can go out right now and make 7 to 10 free throws. And I've done it. Like, I shoot free throws. I can make 7 to 10 free throws. I'm not asking for 90%. I think usually it's like 85% is the college basketball leader. They shoot sub 70, and it's not close to 70. I'm asking for spitting distance, and they're not even remotely close. You tweeted out the Wes Miller quote, and it is your job as a very serious journalist to tweet out his quotes. And you knew you had a banger under your hands when he said, "I'm not worried about free throw shooting." Are you, Keegan? Not Wes Miller. Are you worried about free throw shooting? And should the Bearcats maybe be a little bit worried about free throw shooting if they're going to lose close games? I know last night wasn't a factor. They were 6 for 12 last night. But against the past 2 team, Arizona and Kansas State, those matter. Made free throws matter.
Okay, couple things. One, if you're shooting free throws in front of 13,000 fans in a close game, you're not making 7 out of 10.
No, let's put money on it. Wes, give me a call. Give me a call. I'll make 7 to 10 right now. Right now.
Secondly, I don't even ask about free throws after games because I know the coach is going to say the same thing. And Wes has said it, and it's true. When they need to make a free throw, which is excluding times late in the game where they need to get a rebound and a quick 2, he has never had a player that has purposefully missed a free throw. They are trying to make them. The same thing happened under Mick Cronin. It's happened under multiple UC coaches. So you have to be worried about it because it's an issue. It's costing you multiple games. It's easy offense when your offense is struggling, especially when you're going to pride yourself as a defensive and rebounding team. You should be able to control making 75% of your free throws, maybe. Like you said, you're not asking for 90%, like Steph Curry range. But you should be able to make a good amount of your free throws. So it's definitely concerning. Like they have to start making free throws. But, I mean, teams aren't playing defense against free throws. So it's kind of as easy as just getting up shots and practicing it, putting pressure on in practice. I mean, where would this team be if Aziz Bandaogo wasn't shooting free throws as well as he has been?
Yeah.
I think he had multiple games where he made 5+ free throws and had stretches where he was making like 80% of his attempts. And that was just him literally not taking water breaks during practice and just going straight to the free throw line and practicing. So, I mean, it's completely a mental thing of just being able to step up and make it. And as this season wanes on, they're going to have to do that, especially if the offense is going to continue to struggle.
Dan Skillings has been one of the few bright spots in these last 3 games, I would say. 18 points each of the last 3 games. I think you need Dan Skillings to be the Dan Skillings we all thought. He's been that as of late. The issue is they need to consistently make a shot. I don't know if I trust Dan Skillings to do that. I would say that he's been able to hit big threes down the stretch, especially during conference play here. But who is that guy going forward? You mentioned it earlier. You mentioned Seamoss and Page. But outside of those two, I mean, somebody has to step up, right? Why is Jizzle at this very second struggling so much with his shot? And it seems like the mid-range stuff was his bread and butter. This year, it's completely different.
Yeah, the mid-range was his bread and butter last year. I mean, that was basically automatic for him. And a lot of opposing defenses and opposing coaches are going to say, okay, take that shot. Like we like when teams take those mid-range 2s because they're difficult shots to make. And it's just not happening this year. It's the same thing with Seamoss Lukosius. He doesn't have the same amount of room off of those screens for the threes that he had in the non-con because he's playing better competition. So it's just not translating. And you mentioned Dan Skillings Jr. He's not supposed to be playing the game that he has been playing in the last 3 games. He's not supposed to be a guy that scores 18 points and grabs. He had 2 rebounds against Baylor. He had 2 against Kansas State, and I think he had maybe 4 or 5 against Arizona. Like, he's supposed to be almost a double-double guy. Like, maybe 12 points and 8 rebounds, not 18 and then less. The offense is supposed to go through Seamoss and Jizzle, point blank. Dylan Mitchell didn't score a point for the first time since his freshman year in the NCAA tournament. That's ridiculous. I haven't been able to get into it, but I would like to see the last time a Cincinnati starter played 30 minutes, as you said, and didn't score a point. Like that cannot happen. And Dylan was actually asked after the Arizona game, like, do you feel like you are supposed to be being more aggressive when the offenses are kind of pressing in on Jizzle and pressing in on Seamoss? And he kind of said, no, I just kind of let the game come to me. It's like, no, something has to change. Like, you have to be more aggressive. You're a freakishly athletic kid. You've played a ton of college basketball at the highest level. You're supposed to be able to contribute in these games, and it really just isn't happening. So it's like 4 levels of stuff that they have to figure out and change in order to get back into it. And, I mean, they're facing Kansas on Saturday, and then they go to Colorado, and Colorado does not lose at home, like, often. So they could start 0-5 in Big 12 play, and I would not be surprised. And then their route to getting to even 10 wins is very murky.
Scoring in the paint, I feel like, it's been an issue too, and they've had this plan. I talked with you I don't know when when I last talked with you on the show, but whenever I did, I brought up the lob. And Aziz, I do feel like if we don't have him defensively, we don't have a chance in any of these games. I think he's such a big, important piece defensively. Because to be fair to Wes Miller, despite what the offense looks, up until last night, the defense has looked phenomenal, especially during certain points. I know it fell apart during Arizona at the very last second, but I do think the defense has stepped up. Aziz has stepped up big time these past couple of games. But scoring down low is an issue. I just feel like it's because when you drive to the basket, usually you're trying to be aggressive and get to the free throw line. You can't do that here. And that's I feel like one of the bigger issues with Dylan Mitchell. Let's say he drives to the hoop, gets fouled, 0 for 2. There's no chance he makes one. And I just feel like at some point there needs to be more post play. Aziz, I don't know if he really has a move. Does he have a move? Is there a move he goes to? It's just the lob, right?
It's a lob, and he'll try to kind of maybe do a pump fake, get the defender to miss, and then he has an easy layup. And like you said with Dylan Mitchell, when he drives, it's either go to the free throw line for 2 missed free throws, or he did in Arizona, Kansas State, just full extension elbow for an offensive foul in the first possession that he gets. The inside game is tough because teams know that basically his only offensive threat is the lob. And for good teams, that's rather easy to take away, especially when you aren't towering over them like they did against Dayton. So without that part of the offense, they have to turn to something else, and then they become a very, very easy offense to defend because you can pretty easily take away Dylan Mitchell and Aziz Bandego, and then you're playing 3 versus 5. So that's where some pretty big wholesale changes have to come in. The idea of floating Day Thomas back into the starting lineup has come up, not from Wes or anyone, but it's kind of just an idea within the fan base, within the people I talk to. He's their fastest player. He's probably their best driver. If he could finish a dunk in transition, that would probably help a lot. But yeah, I think Day inserted into the starting lineup is kind of their only option at this point because, I mean, you're not going to put Connor Hickman in or Aaron Page or Tyler Betsy. So they're kind of grasping at straws at the moment. But as I've said and repeated over and over again, they're running out of time and they have to be in desperation mode. They needed to be in desperation mode against Kansas State, knowing where the Wildcats were at, losing. I think they were 6-5 going into that game with no wins over top 100 teams. And then you have a home game against Arizona where you should be desperate as well, knowing what that can do for you. You don't come out desperate. And then Baylor, again, they out-energize you and out-hustle you. So that's a thing of where Wes said after the Arizona game, we got out-physicaled 2 games in a row, and he said, I don't know what to do with that. I'm not a psychologist. Is that okay? Go ahead. I won't, by the way, I'm fighting a cough. So if I cough during this, I'm very sorry in your ear. And by the way, real quick, before I get to my next thing, when they had if a player on the opposing team goes 0 for 2 at the line, they get free cupcakes in the arena last night. I literally laughed out loud. Because it's whatever the cupcake store was, they got to close shop when the Bearcats come to town. They legit got to close shop. Bearcats aren't making a free throw. I don't want to do the Wes Miller thing. But I unfortunately have to. I think at this point, this is year 4. I think he's done a great job. I really do. I love Wes Miller. I think from where he started, and with all due respect to John Brannon, the program was torched. Wes Miller got the program and has been building it back up. The recruiting has been incredible. The transfers, I feel like, have been very, very good. The atmosphere, I think there's more atmosphere. The vibes inside of the arena have been incredible since Wes has taken over. Mm-hmm. But the pressure to make the tournament has to come at some point. This is year 4. You're 0-3 to start conference play with seemingly the best roster you've ever had. The buyout before March 31st of this year would be $13 million, almost $10 million if fired before March of next year. For the fans that are questioning him at this moment, would you say there is a 0.00% chance that he gets fired in the next 2 years? In the next 2 years, if he misses the tournament this year, I don't think he's gone. I think it's a 0% chance after this season. If he is able to bring in a roster next year, including one of their highest ranked recruits in Shauna Bayev, who if you put him on the floor with this team, it changes everything just based off how good he is and how he looks. If he were to miss a tournament after next year, I think that's when the questions would come in, because it's year 5 and you still haven't made it, and the recruiting just keeps going up. And like Cincinnati getting a Shanabayev, it might be their ceiling. I don't think they're going to get to the top 15, top 10 guys. Those are all blue bloods. Those are all guys who have more money, more resources, more history. For me, Wes's tenure, and as you mentioned with Brandon and how he torched the program, for me, Wes's tenure kind of started last year. I think that was the only team he had that actually had a chance to make the tournament because of what he was building with. And he's going against Memphis and Houston and pretty good teams in the AAC. And then you have the 2 to 3 games a year where you just fall to a team you're not supposed to lose to. But last year was the first team he had a chance. This year is supposed to be a shoe-in. And then depending on what happens next year, you should be a shoe-in as well, especially the standard that he set for himself and the standard at Cincinnati. So after this year, if he misses, he comes back next year, and then that's when the questions start to arise if he is to miss the NCAA tournament for the 5th straight season.
I mean, the other part of it, too, is Cunningham has to hit on one of these guys. So it's I feel like the pressure almost is more on Cunningham than anybody at this moment because he's yet to hit on one of these guys. Scott Satterfield, who knows? I know he's doing an okay job with these transfers, but again, no success yet for him in 2 seasons. You have Wes Miller, who in 4 seasons, he's been okay. He's done a great job at reviving the vibes here, but again, nothing to really show for it. So that's why I don't think Wes will be fired, and I don't think he should be fired after this year. But we are getting to a point where the pressure is there, and just saying you're pissed after every game isn't going to fly for too much longer. But we're going to end on a positive note. Note, Keegan. Thank you very much. Bearcat Journal. It's an interesting situation, obviously, coming into the biggest game of the year. I think most Bearcats fans circled this one as, we need to be here. This is going to be awesome, electric. You get to see one of the best basketball programs of all time come to town, play at Fifth Third. Kansas on Saturday. This feels like, you talked about the desperation and how desperate they need to be. This feels like not only just like a must win, it feels like everything. The whole season is on the brink, and if you were to lose this, it's a must-win and a can't-lose, because if you lose this, I think the vibes you're going to see close to rock bottom for this season. And again, I'm not expecting the Bearcats to beat Kansas. That's not what I'm saying. But you have to see some sort of fight, right, on Saturday?
Yeah, I think I have to see a 3-4 point loss when it comes down to the final minute, or a lot of people are going to be out on this team. They still have a chance if they were to lose to Kansas to go on a run and beat some teams below them, get the confidence back, build momentum, and then pick up a few wins that you probably weren't supposed to win. But, I mean, this game now, it feels similar to the Oklahoma football game in the first year in the Big 12, where you beat Pitt, and then you're like, oh, this might be a pretty good team. We got Oklahoma coming in 2 weeks. You just got to take care of Miami at home and then go into that game 2-0. Yeah. And you lose to Miami, and then that game's awkward with big noon kickoff coming in and everything. So this game feels a little bit awkward. It's still going to be a sellout because this fan base is awesome. You bring in one of the best brands in college basketball in Kansas and Bill Self. It should be an electric atmosphere, and they have to be desperate. And it's got to be apparent in the first 3 minutes of the game, because if you come out slow, just like against Arizona, just like against a talented Kansas State team, they're going to punch you in the mouth, and it's going to be hard to recover. So you have to build that confidence and practice and carry it into the game, or they have a legitimate shot of losing to Kansas and then also losing to Colorado in Boulder and starting 0-5.
We're going to be back. Don't worry. They're going to make the tournament this year. I believe. Keegan believes. We all believe. Keegan Nickerson, Bearcat Journal, journalist extraordinaire. Thank you very much for joining on this Bearcat extravaganza here on Hump Day this Wednesday. Thank you very much, Keegan. I hope to talk to you soon. The next time I talk to you, I hope the Bearcats have a couple conference wins, yeah?
Maybe, yeah, that would be a good idea. Make for a better conversation.
I think so. These questions were so sad when I was typing them up. But that's it. Keegan, thank you, buddy. Have a good Wednesday. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Elliot. See you guys.
I'll tell you
All
what.
right, and again,
it's getting frustrating. I'm getting frustrated with the teams here in Cincinnati, boys. I got nothing left. What do I have left?
I don't know, but
what do I have left to cheer for?
I'm going to tell you what I'm not.
Casey came into the studio with a big grin and told me FC Cincinnati preseason. Isn't Acosta leaving?
What is? Yeah, I don't know. I honestly have no clue.
Acosta's leaving. There's nothing left. Xavier, you see, we have nobody. Who do we have? I think the Norse. The Norse is all we got.
No, they're bad too.
Well, we got to have somebody. I got to start doing what Jacob does. My teams are going to be Duke and North Carolina.
Hey, whoa.
And we'll see if I can just pick one of them right.
I root for a good team, and then I got a degree from a school that's also good.
Yeah.
You could have been a Buckeye fan. I don't know why Cincinnati people chose to root for UC and Xavier when they were growing up. Like that sucks. Be a Buckeye fan.
It's a joke.
Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wing AM in Dayton. I will step away for a few moments. We talked about that Wes Miller soundbite, Mick Cronin soundbite. We got that coming up, plus Mike Gola Jr. Will be joining us coming up here around the corner as well to talk college football playoffs, Notre Dame, Penn State, Ohio State, Texas, and more. More Off the Bench next.
That was good. Thanks.
And we are back. This is Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. Justin Kinner, Elliot Rearing, Jacob Tissett with you here. Casey McAllister, of course, in the producer chair, holding it down for us. We appreciate everyone tuning in and hanging out with us here today. So we just talked, the Bearcats season seems to be, snowballing a little bit out of control. The wild thing is you guys talked about who in Ohio to root for. There's only one team in college basketball in the state of Ohio that has a record under 500. Can you name that team?
Has a record under 500?
Under 500. Every team in the state of Ohio is 500 or better except for one team. And that is the Bowling Green Falcons. Shout out to the Falcons of old Bowling Green. But yeah, I went through and looked. I'm like, every team is at least 500 or better in the state of Ohio right now. Ohio State's 10-5, but they
got
do
those Red Hawks playing some good basketball.
Yes.
Yeah, he does.
They're 10-4 right now. He has them rolling as far as that goes. But Dayton, had some good losses and some big wins early on, and then ever since that loss to Cincinnati, they just have not looked as good. They're coming off a loss this past weekend on the road. There's going to be a lot of teams with good records, but any threats for March, that's still up for debate at this moment. But a lot of fans frustrated with their college teams here in the state of Ohio. Cincinnati Bearcat fans, as you guys just heard, is one of those fan bases. Wes Miller a little frustrated as well. Wes Miller in the postgame last night, had this to say following the Bearcats' loss.
With the outside noise now, people are going to say overrated, things like that. You drop 3.
I don't know what choice you have because I guess you do have 2 choices. You can either deal with it the right way, which is to pay it absolutely no mind and focus on what we got to do, or you can handle it the wrong way and let it affect you. I can tell you what we're going to do. I'll tell everybody, you can say as many bad things as you want about our team and our players and our coaches and myself. You can say as many of that crap as you want on social media. I ain't going to listen to it. I got no time for it. We're a good team. We've been a good team. We will be a good team. So we're going to get back to work on doing all the things we have to do to get back on track. We're going to handle that part the right way. We ain't going to pay any damn mind to it. That's very difficult for young people in 2024 with the cell phones and all that stuff. But I got a really tough group of kids. I got a high-character group of kids. I got no worries about that.
With the cell phones.
Again,
the issue though, they're not a good team. And I think that's where the disconnect here is. I like Wes Miller a lot. He has to, like, you can only get on a guy, a head coach, for saying stuff in the post game for so long, because it's their job. They have to stick up for their team, for their program. It's legitimately part of the job. No matter win or loss, you have to say stuff like that. My issue is in year 4, I need to see it. I need to see the vision, and we're just not seeing it. I thought we saw a little bit of the vision last year, especially down the stretch. You can't start the season the way they've started. It's just been a non-factor. Their offense has been a non-factor, and they've got a lot of work to do if they have any hopes to make the tournament.
North Carolina sitting at 10-6. Hubert Davis not living up to expectations. You think they come take Wes off your hands?
We'll see. I mean, we'll see. At this point, I wouldn't hate it.
I'd be pretty shocked.
Yeah, I would think anybody with a brain would be shocked on that one.
Power rank the Millers at this point.
I don't know, because Sean Miller, my guy Sean Miller over there, he's not having a great season either, and I think there's got to be some pressure from the Xavier fan base at some point too. Hasn't had a ton of success.
Success with Travis's guys.
That's what I'm saying. There's going to be a lot of talk around this town next season about who's on the hot seat. The issue is, I think Sean Miller is a proven great head basketball coach. I don't know if Wes has that yet. He did great at Greensboro, but when it comes time to playing real basketball, no disrespect, you got to step up in these big moments, and he hasn't yet.
Well, what if Mick Cronin was available to return to the Bearcats? Would they take him? Now, you're probably saying, why would they? Well, he won't be available. He's the head coach at UCLA. Well, how are things going with the old Bruins over there? I don't think they're going so hot. Mick Cronin also had a post-game reaction last night that has people talking. Here's former Bearcat coach, now head coach of UCLA and the Bruins. Here's his memorable press conference response last night, basically pointing the finger at everyone else around him except himself. Here's Mick Cronin.
But we don't play. We're soft. So don't tell me you want to win. Just don't tell me you want to win. So don't tell me you want to win. It's crazy, and it's every day. I'm tired of it. It's every day. I have the most energy of anybody at practice every day. I'm upset with everybody in that locker room, my assistant coaches and my players. I mean, I don't need to do anything else. I almost got 500 wins. I'm only 53. I mean, it's a joke. It's a joke. But yet I come in and I have more passion and energy and pride than everybody in. That's the problem. So what the truth of it has been, it's really hard to coach people that are delusional. The hungry dog gets the bone. We got guys that think they're way better than they are. They're nice kids. They're completely delusional about who they are. But
I love
it. That I wake up in the morning and I pee excellence. That's Mick Cronin right there.
I love it.
Good for him. Now that's a wild one. I mean, it can't be me. I almost have 500 wins. What are we doing here? I thought that was a memorable one right there, but obviously I don't know much. It's not like we follow UCLA basketball. I would have to think that no matter what fan base, no matter how big or small your college basketball fan base is in any sport, when a coach does that, I have a hard time believing that that's going to go over well with NIL collectives, boosters, supporters of the program, the players, future players. Probably not the best decision by Mick Cronin, no matter how true or untrue any of that stuff is.
Mick's one of the most entertaining coaches of all time in terms of just watching him and instead of watching the games and his blow-ups on the sideline and obviously press conferences like that. I love Mick. I miss him in Cincinnati.
When he threatened to kick off the basketball team for football players, it's one of my all-time favorite quotes. So maybe he'll try to do that at UCLA. I think he'd have a hard time with those football players, but we'll see. I love Mick Cronin's. That's a laugh out loud. What do you say? I have a hard time coaching delusion.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
It's very good stuff. I love Mick.
All right, Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Justin Kinner, Elliot Rearing, Jacob Tissett with you here. Casey McCullister in the producer chair. Mike Golick Jr., we're working on getting him logged in. He said he's efforting that now, so he'll jump on with us coming up here around the corner. We'll talk some college football, Notre Dame, Penn State, Ohio State, Texas, Bengals, NFL, and more. Mike Golick Jr. joins us next. All right, and we are back. This is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wing AM in Dayton. Justin Kinner, Elliot Rearing, Jacob Tissett with you here. Casey McCullister in the producer chair. We'll continue on. Talk some college basketball here today. As we're talking about a little bit ago, only one team in the whole state of Ohio has a record under 500 in college basketball. Go Falcons. Shout out to Bowling Green. They're not doing their job. But it's funny, all these winning records, but no one feels good about their team right now. It's kind of funny how that works. But we'll get to more of that coming up. Let's talk college football. College football playoffs, the semifinals. Final Four continues this week. Ohio State and Texas on Friday night. And then, obviously, Notre Dame and Penn State coming up on Thursday night. And joining us now to talk all things college football, NFL, and more, former Notre Dame Fighting Irish himself, we have Mr. Mike Golick Jr. hanging out with us. Mike, it's been a while, my friend. Welcome. How are you, sir?
Doing well. How you guys doing?
Good. We appreciate your time. Let me ask you we'll get to Notre Dame coming up in a second, but when you look at this Final Four, you look at how we got here to this point, go back to when it was announced that the playoffs are going to be expanded to 12 teams, and yet here we are now, the Final Four is set. Have the concerns about the 12-team playoff that you had played out, and the things you were excited about the 12-team college football playoff, has that played out as well? From the beginning to now, how has this played out in your opinion? Has it been a smooth ride by any means?
We lost his mic.
Mike, I think we lost your mic real quick. So sorry. My apologies. Here, we'll go back to Jacob and Elliot real quick, and we'll get his mic situation figured out, or us in general. Sorry about that, Mike, but we'll get Golick Jr. back on with us coming up here in just a moment. So Golick Jr. played at Notre Dame. when we get his figured out, I am going to ask him, when is Notre Dame going to get into conference, by the way. I do plan on throwing that. He'll probably hit it back to me in the face a little bit, but that's okay.
They made a lot of money in this playoff by being independent, so I think they're turning their nose up at that.
Yeah, and I saw that payout. That payout's pretty ridiculous. That's why I said, hey, Ohio State, why are you sharing all your money with the Big Ten?
That's right. Maryland doesn't
but let's go back. I think we're in the clear. I think we got the Mike situation figured out, so let's go back to it. Mike Golick Jr., former Notre Dame Fighting Irish, hanging out with us here today. Mike, sorry about that. Appreciate your time. The college football playoff, the Final Four is set. Just thoughts on how we got to this point. Have you been a fan of the 12-team playoff at this point?
Yeah, I think for me, the home games in the first round are really what became the defining characteristic for me in the positive light here. The scenes, going back and getting to see the first ever college football playoff home game in South Bend, getting the next day to go see Penn State take on SMU, and what a weapon that crowd turned out to be for them. I just think across the sport, that was the best of us. That was what we should be doing with this as a reward for these seasons in the postseason where, I think expansion was ultimately going to crown a new champion. Originally, I didn't think so. I thought we'd still be dealing with the same group of 4 or 5 teams that were truly better than everybody else. But what we've seen this year is a flattening of the talent curve to some extent. No truly dominant team, although maybe Ohio State rounding into that at this point of the season. And a field that now gives an opportunity for a do-over. You look at some of these teams like a Notre Dame that probably wouldn't have been in the 4-team field had we still been seeding it that way. And now, Georgia, who would have been in that field but would have been doing it with a backup quarterback, they get shown the door early in a way that's probably good for the overall product as we go forward to have teams in there, sort of the way we designed the playoff committee originally to try and make sure we had the, combination of best versus most deserving in there. So I think it's been entertaining. I think everyone's well documented on the seeding issues that need to change going forward. But overall, I'd say this has been great.
Let's talk about the Fighting Irish at this point. You go back to the beginning of the season. You have that loss against Northern Illinois. The narrative at that time was vastly different. Marcus Freeman and the losses against Marshall and just the losses in primetime opportunities starting to pile up. And that narrative began to kind of snowball and take on, a story of itself. But the way the Fighting Irish have responded since then, I'm not going to lie, I'm kind of shocked that they're at this point considering the vibes of where the program was after that Northern Illinois loss earlier in the season. Just your overall takeaway as we sit here right now, were you surprised that they were able to bounce back the way that they have and find themselves in the semifinals against Penn State with the chance to get to the national title? Did you feel that was still a possibility after losing to Northern Illinois a few months ago?
I certainly thought the odds were a lot slimmer, less that the team would be able to respond. I truly think Marcus has shown they can go out there and be competitive in the high leverage games. There's still a problem of playing down to your competition that reared its ugly head early in the season, but man, that seemed to have been a turning point to where now in year 3 for Marcus, he's really grown into himself as a head coach in terms of what's expected of him in game, on the field. He's become incredibly aggressive as a decision maker, more 4th down attempts this year than his first 2 years combined. Obviously, you've got special teams plays that they've gone out and brought out exotics for. You've got the 4th down call from the Georgia game that everyone talks about there. I just think overall his confidence in how to manage those situations is at an all-time high. But then the motivation, you heard every player on that team talk about how Marcus used that moment as a teachable moment and never let up. It wasn't something that was a teachable moment in week 3, 4, and 5. It was 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way up till now. I'm sure they're going to talk about that in the lead up to the Penn State game. They weaponized that moment, and we hear so many programs talk about using moments as a building block or a stepping stone, but they really seem to have done it. And so that's a credit to the leadership on the team. But, we got a chance to talk to Riley Leonard, their quarterback, a while back, and he said, all of that stems from Marcus Freeman, the example that he puts on display every day for this locker room and both how he treats everyone in the building from top to bottom. Riley said he treats every member of that organization like they're the starting quarterback, but also the intensity that he attacks each day with and the attention to detail that's now a hallmark for that program.
Mike Golick Jr. with us here again off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Penn State coming up, obviously semifinals, a chance to get to the national championship, and another big one for Marcus Freeman and company, of course. Notre Dame, Penn State, how do the Fighting Irish stack up against the Nittany Lions right now? 2 programs who, again, have really put on fine performances throughout this playoff and have kind of raised some narratives about them coming in as we just discussed. How do the Fighting Irish kind of stack up against Penn State as they fight to get to the national championship?
Yeah, remarkably similar teams, right? Both defined by defense, and Notre Dame been the best team in college football in turnover margin the entire season. Penn State, 7 turnovers through the first 2 playoff games, taking the ball away on the back end. And then offensively, both teams defined more by their running game than passing game, flawed but talented quarterbacks in Drew Aller and Riley Leonard at the helm. And so I think this game comes down to a couple of key areas. The one area where Penn State's offense has been markedly better than Notre Dame's is in the red zone. One of the above average good red zone team, where Notre Dame's in the bottom half of college football in that regard. They've been more opportunistic than they have been effective consistently in that area. And then I think the other area that's going to be really interesting is explosive plays for Penn State. I believe they're 6th in percentage of their offensive plays that go for explosives, while Notre Dame's 6th in explosive play percentage allowed on defense. They've been one of the best defenses in college football, and quite honestly, during the postseason, I would argue Notre Dame's defense has looked like the best defense in the sport, maybe just south of that Ohio State defense that's done such a great job, especially in the front 7. But I think that's ultimately the key in this game. I don't still trust Drew Aller and this Penn State defense to be able to move the ball consistently down the field and make those big plays on Notre Dame's attack here. I think the strength of Notre Dame's back end, especially in that safety room where Xavier Watts is the name everyone knows, but Adon Schuler has been a freshman All-American and a tremendous player for them. It provides a really interesting great-on-great matchup with Tyler Warren for Penn State, who's been their primary pass catcher all season long.
You mentioned how much both these teams rely on their run game. Earlier today, Marcus Freeman said Jeremiah Love had a good week of practice, but they have to be smart about how much they're using him in practice. No one's 100% right now, but Love will be good to go. Other than that 98-yard touchdown against Indiana, he certainly hasn't been the same player we've seen in the regular season in this play to his original form in this game, and how much of an impact can he have?
I think like a lot of great players, part of his impact could also just be the gravity he has on the field. I think they're going to have to get creative because you're right. Against the Georgia game, there were a couple of plays where the Jeremiah Love we saw during the regular season would have made a bounce outside, would have tried to make someone miss, would have gone for the spectacular play, and instead kept it up inside, tried to grind out tough yards, and that could have been game plan specific, but I also think part of that was some of the physical limitations rearing their head for Jeremiah, especially after he aggravated that injury during the game. You saw later on Jadarian Price, who's been a great compliment to him in the backfield, did hit some of those runs on the outside, did bounce some of those things out there, and him and Riley Leonard ended up really being the story of that game for Notre Dame on the ground. And so I think it's going to be, hey, you got to be judicious with where Jeremiah Love gets touches. You're going to want him there still in high leverage situations because as he showed you, coming off that knee injury and dealing with illness in that first round game, he was still able to make one of the 2 plays that ultimately swung the balance of the Indiana game. And so I think between that and maybe using him as a decoy, there's still plenty that he can afford this team.
Penn State was double-digit favorites in both of their first 2 playoff games. Neither of those 2 against SMU or Boise State really had that big game feel that we talk about James Franklin failing in those moments a lot. This one certainly does. This Orange Bowl is about as big as it could get. Penn State versus Notre Dame, 2 massive brands, 2 teams that everyone thought coming into the playoff were national championship contenders. How does Notre Dame having that challenge against Georgia in the quarterfinal and Penn State just cruising through their first 2 rounds affect the mindset going into this one for both teams?
Yeah, I just think, mindset-wise, both these teams are probably in a great place. For Penn State, the kind of dominance you have there, puts plenty of wind behind your sails, and that's all you're looking for right now. Coaches to be able to say, hey, you went out here and did what we asked of you, and look what the results were. And for Penn State, that's certainly the case. But Notre Dame, I think the mental advantage that they've had for so much of this season post-NIU, and they've talked about it, is every game's been a playoff game. And so when they got in tough situations against Georgia, where all of a sudden in the second half, after that kickoff return that really made it feel like things were going their way, hey, Georgia gets back in the end zone and the game starts to feel tight again. Well, they've been in tight situations. They've been in close games. They've been in difficult circumstances recently because every week was them on the trial for their playoff lives. And so they haven't blinked when that's come up here. That's been a tremendously focused group who's been used to playing close games or playing games where, the USC game in the last game of the regular season, there was some adversity leading up to the end, and they didn't blink and they managed to make the plays necessary. So can Penn State, in a game that's once again competitive like that after a couple of weeks where they really haven't had much to worry about because early in the game they put these teams sort of out of arm's reach, that'll be the question of if any of that maybe rears its head, because I know people have had an aversion of that conversation with the rest versus rust, Ohio State against Oregon in that game, and hey, maybe did the layoff mean Oregon took a half to sort of start feeling and playing the football that they had played all season long? when it was already too late. But I do think Notre Dame's mettle in these tough contests and the monkey off their back, whether it was felt in that locker room or not around the program, certainly that idea of Notre Dame in the big game, they've already checked that box. Even though Georgia was on their backup quarterback, that was still a pedigree win that trumps what Penn State's had so far in this playoff run. And so some of those questions may persist there. I think they've already been answered to an extent for Notre Dame.
I think Drew Aller is the best quarterback left in the playoff. I actually had him as the number one quarterback coming into the playoff, and many suggested that he'd be the third quarterback in this draft class if he did determine to go. And before the playoff, he announced he'd be coming back to Penn State next year for his last season of eligibility. With a win potentially on Thursday night over Notre Dame, playing in the national championship game, is there any chance that Drew Aller could change his mind and end up entering this draft? It's something that's been talked about a little bit, and I think it could really shake up the start of this draft class if he does.
Yeah, I think it'd be an interesting opportunity because this is somewhat of a flawed draft class for quarterbacks that lacks the depth of last year's class. I don't see it with Drew Aller in the same way everyone else does. I know there was some big-time throws in this last win against Boise State, but this is still a quarterback that in most of the big games I've seen seems more like a great collection of skills than right now a fully functioning high-end quarterback. And there are a lot of great skills there. The arm talent's undeniable. He's mobile enough to be a factor and a threat for you, but you've just seen too many missed layups in key spots. We know the well-documented woes of him against Ohio State and Michigan over the last couple of years, and so I'm still going to need to see it before I believe it. But there's no doubt that, hey, listen, if NFL people are excited about you and in a draft class where physically he'd afford you something that neither of the other prospects can, right, there's money to be made in that regard. So I wouldn't be shocked if he took another look there, especially if he does string together a couple of other performances, because this is generally how it tends to go with talented quarterbacks. You only need to see but so much before NFL people are going to assume, hey, I can take those skills and make them something great. Whether or not they can is usually a different debate entirely.
In the other semifinal game, Ohio State and Texas in Dallas, Ohio State's rolled so far through their first 2 weeks, playing arguably the best team in both rounds, in number one Oregon and Tennessee in the first round, and they've looked as dominant as a lot of people expected them to coming into this season. Do you expect more of that against Texas? It's a 6-point spread, but it seems to be a lot of people are respecting Ohio State at that number. Do you expect more of the same, or will the Buckeyes finally play a nail-biter in this playoff?
I am expecting more of the same until proven otherwise at this point. We know Ohio State is capable of playing a clunker, but I just think now, you know, the O-line was the question mark for them going into the season. They had answers with talent early on that were unfortunately affected by injury, and now you're moving guys around. Donovan Jackson's done such a phenomenal job going out to left tackle. I said Joe Tooney-esque with what he's done for the Chiefs in the NFL in terms of, I think, the credit he deserves for not only the selflessness, but the competence at a position that's certainly one that doesn't perfectly fit his skill set. But that group's gelled together since those injuries. Now they've got enough time together where it is no longer a weakness that you can point to as an area you worry a ton about going into each game. It's certainly the lesser talented area of their team, but that's just because the receiver room, the defensive line, the safety room, all these areas are chock full of such rich NFL talent that by comparison it seems lesser. But I see no reason for it to slow down for Ohio State right now. I think this is a team that is playing with a renewed confidence coming off all the slights thrown their way after the Michigan game at the end of the regular season, and now seems to have unlocked that level that we all thought when this roster was put together in this offseason they'd be capable of. And so I just think Texas has had too much trouble running the football offensively, while Quinn Ewers and that passing attack have taken some hits since he's been injured down the back half of the season. And even defensively, you saw a ton of points given up late to Arizona State, more points than expected given up to that Clemson team that's an above-average offense, certainly, but not world beaters the way Ohio State is. And so those are my worries there with the Ohio State front four playing as well as they are, and Texas having some struggles up front, some due to injury and some just due to, at this point, a maybe lack of physicality that we expected along that offensive front. I have my worries about if they're going to be able to keep pace with Ohio State if they continue to play this way.
Texas is kind of you look at their numbers offensively. They put up great numbers offensively. You look at how many points they put up. They move the football. When it does, the numbers don't seem to match the aesthetics of when you watch Texas play football, as wild as that sounds. They've had a great first year in the SEC, obviously, no doubt about it. I mean, they've put the world on notice with coming into the SEC and having instant success with Sarkisian, no doubt about it. But I still feel like we've yet to see them play their best game. What is the best game for Texas right now? Because it feels like as good as the numbers for Quinn Ewers can be, there's just something missing with Quinn this season. We've talked on our show for a while about how many quarterbacks regressed this year. We thought so many quarterbacks would be talking about a handful of elite, high-level NFL draft prospects, and that doesn't seem to be the case. A lot of QBs regressed, Quinn Ewers being one of those. What's your analysis takeaway of Quinn Ewers in this Texas offense? Because as good as they've been, it still feels like there's a lot of meat left on that bone.
I think that after this season, it'll be curious to find out how injured Quinn was during this season. Like between an ankle injury, he was never an overly mobile guy, so I don't want to overstate that. He's not arch in terms of the way his legs can affect things, but his best game was the game against Michigan on the road, where you saw buying time in the pocket, manipulating things to get guys open downfield. That was the best of him there, and then between whatever it was, a shoulder or an oblique injury, something that certainly with the torque required to throw the football would be an impact. And then the ankle where, pushing off, being able to maneuver in the pocket that way, all of them are affected. I do wonder how much he's still dealing with the effect of that and how that affected the timing overall. So we won't find that out till well after this. But I think the best version of them is one where, hey, Quinn is able to go and unleash the deep ball early between Matthew Golden and Isaiah Bond and the guys that have been in that receiver room all year. There's some speed that you can certainly stretch the field with. Stark's the most talented play caller left in the college football playoff. It's probably a tight race between him and Chip Kelly in that regard. But then it's the running game. I really think when this team's been at its best, Wisner, Jaden Blue, Jarrett Gibson, these guys that they've had in this backfield have been able to go out here and set the tone for this team. And so, it's that, and then it's the play action stuff that Sark's been so well known for so long that allows them to play more complementary football, because this defense, so talented, so deep. The back end's got some great guys. Barron against Jeremiah Smith is going to be an awesome, great-on-great matchup in that regard. But Texas has to win this one in the trenches in a way they haven't in a while offensively.
Mike Golick Jr. hanging out with us here off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. I will step away for just a brief second. More with Mike Golick Jr. when we come back. All right, and we are back. This is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, 1410 ESPN Radio in Dayton, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube. Mike Golick Jr. hanging out with us here today on Off the Bench. Answer this last college football question. I know we could throw some NFL your way a little bit, but from a Notre Dame perspective, Ohio State or Texas, obviously you got to get through Penn State first, but which team do you think Notre Dame matches up better with? Which matchup would you prefer to see as a Notre Dame alum? Which national championship matchup, if your team's in it, would you like to see more?
I think they're both incredibly talented teams that would provide a really unique matchup challenge for Notre Dame at this point in their season. Notre Dame, because the offense is by far the least potent left in the field, has to win games in the margins, and they've done that. I think they're the best complementary football team left in the dance when it comes from that combination of offense playing off defense, special teams having an impact on the game, the coaching that Marcus Freeman's done. But I think if you're trying to game out for the best opportunity to win a national championship, Ohio State's the favorite for a reason right now. I think their roster, when it fires on all cylinders, is capable of a level that almost no one else in the field is. Maybe you could argue Texas, with all the talent on that team, might certainly be able to match them. But if you're asking which one of those you'd probably rather face, it's certainly no disrespect or bulletin board material for Texas. But facing Ohio State, if they're playing the way they did in the first two rounds, feels like a death sentence for whoever they're going up against right now. And so I think if you're Notre Dame, you'd say, hey, all right, this Texas team has at least showed a little bit more vulnerability through the first couple of games of the postseason, even if they are incredibly talented and well coached, and you'd probably prefer that matchup.
You talked about it while we were previewing the Penn State and Notre Dame game. Shifting gears to the NFL now, the Notre Dame defense flies around on all three levels. Great players at all three levels. My Bengals fired their defensive coordinator yesterday, Lou Anarumo, and your defensive coordinator at Notre Dame, Al Golden, ex-Bengals linebackers coach, during a pretty fun time here in Cincinnati when we made a run to the Super Bowl. He's a name that I've thrown around a couple of times, potentially coming back to the league and taking that role for the Bengals. Is there any interest, you think, from Al Golden to return to the league and leave South Bend?
Let me just say, stay away.
Okay.
Stay away.
Okay.
Leave our sweet boy alone right now. All right.
Enough.
He's having a great time in South Bend. He looks revitalized, going from that South Beach chic to more of the professor aesthetic that he's got right now. Listen, I don't know what's in Al Golden's heart. You know, he's been pretty mum on this when asked about it in the media this week, said he's where his feet are right now. He has not been contacted by anyone on the outside. And so you take him for what his word is there. I could always understand high-level competitors, especially guys that have been at that level, wanting to go compete at the highest level of football.
Sure.
There's no doubt the NFL presents the greatest challenge at that level humanly possible. What I'd say is Notre Dame certainly seems to make this a harder discussion now than they have before. They have devoted more money to the assistant pool right now, paying these guys at an incredibly high competitive level, trying to make this appealing. If you're Al Golden, you are the author of one of the best defenses in the sport that, oh, by the way, if you look at the amount of freshmen and sophomores that have played on that defense, will probably be the same brand of ruthless next season if you're back at the helm especially. And so that versus going to a Cincinnati Bengals team that, listen, you know, you've got a great opportunity because Joe Burrow's your quarterback, and so he's always going to have you in contention, but historically not a franchise that necessarily screams well run. And so while you've got that matched up with Notre Dame that does seem to be in a better place with that right now, I would very much prefer him to stay in South Bend. But again, I don't begrudge anyone also for that jump to the next level that we know doesn't involve as much recruiting, doesn't involve having to worry about guys going to class, has all the advantages that have been reasons we've seen guys like Jeff Hafley make the jump from Boston College to Green Bay this year. So you can understand the appeal there, but at this point in time, I've got no reason to believe Al Golden is leaving South Bend, and that is certainly wishful thinking on my part because you know he's going to be in high demand. You know eventually they're going to have to figure out life after him. I don't want it to be anytime soon.
Speaking of Bengals coaching, the big guy's still here. The city loves him. Zach Taylor's the most revered guy maybe in the history of Cincinnati. But I do feel like at some point the Marvin Lewis kind of thing creeps into the minds of all Bengals fans. And he came out, he fired Lou, he fired Frank Pollock, and now it's Zach Taylor versus the world here by himself. He's going to try a quick reset and see if he can get it fixed for next season. Two back-to-back missed postseasons for the Cincinnati Bengals is inexcusable, but nonetheless, the Bengals do have a history of keeping head coaches a little past their welcome. In your mind, is Zach Taylor's seat getting just a little bit warmer? It's got to be close to getting warm, right?
I think anytime you start firing coordinators, and to your point, back-to-back missed seasons where at least one of them is excusable when you lose one of the true super weapons in the sport. And we saw Joe Burrow's value of that team this year playing MVP caliber ball. You can understand it a bit there, but this season, a different story. To have that defense waste the offensive season you got from Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, and Jamar Chase is inexcusable. And so, yeah, I'd imagine things will heat up a little bit around there now. And, you know, they've got some decisions to make this offseason. I know all the sound from Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase has been about how they want to find a way to work and keep T. Higgins there. But if you're the Bengals at this point, I think you've shown the real issue with the team the last couple of years has been the inability to identify and draft competent talent on the defensive side of the football while you've adjusted to life after paying a quarterback. And so offensively, I trust that, hey, if you've just got Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, you're going to be able to make things work. You need to allocate some more of that money to defense because the one guy you did go and spend money on, Trey Hendrickson, surprise, surprise, been really good. So I think the Bengals probably need to focus more on free agency as a route for getting proven commodities into that defense and maybe less on a draft where they just have right now an inability to hit on that side of the ball in a way that's really hurt them the last couple of years.
You mentioned Joey B. 100-1 to win the MVP this season. I think at least here, though there is a bias, I do think Joe Burrow might have been the best pure passer this season in the National Football League. A down year for Patrick Mahomes, down year for Aaron Rodgers, down year for quite a few guys, quarterbacks in the NFL. Obviously, we know what Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson did this year, and it's been nothing short of incredible. Who do you think would be, if you had to rank those three quarterbacks, if you were restarting a franchise right now today, which one of those three quarterbacks would be your guy?
I would probably, of Lamar, Josh Allen, and Joe Burrow, I'd probably take Lamar Jackson at this point. I think the caliber of football he's playing, to your point, as a passer, coming off his best season as a pure passer right now, but still losing none of the threat of him as a runner and putting up some all-time very unique numbers in the quarterback landscape and what should be an MVP season again for him. I just think that skill set is too unique and too rare in the way he impacts games for you there. For that same reason, God, I mean, it's more like a 2A, 2B in this spot, but I'd probably go Josh Allen over Joe Burrow just because Josh, another one, because he is a guy that's a moose playing football and can go out there and be such a huge plus in the run game for you, is worth double-digit rushing touchdowns every season. It just changes the nature of what you can do. What the Bengals are going to have to do next year, quite honestly, when we talk about, hey, probably letting T. Higgins move on, spending money on defense and saying, hey, Joe, we paid you a whole bunch of money. You are one of the truly great quarterbacks, one of the true, 5 elite quarterbacks in the NFL, that word that we overuse all the time. You're going to have to go out there and shoulder a bunch of the load without one of the two number one level receivers here, the same way Buffalo just asked Josh Allen to do, the same way that the Kansas City Chiefs have asked Patrick Mahomes to do over the last number of years here. Josh Allen's already gone and shown proof of concept of that. He's at a point now where, hey, you had a lesser receiver room, but you got a quarterback that you knew could overcome that, and he did. And so I think for that reason, based on the unreal trajectory and the insane physical skill set there again, I would probably go Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, and then Joe Burrow.
Final question from me, and I've been seeing it on your Twitter feed for quite some time now, the discussion of cakes. So I'm going to give you 3 cakes, and I'd like you to power rank them. I will say the first one I'm going to give you, that's my go-to cake. Angel Food, that's my go-to. Red Velvet, classic ice cream cake.
All right, I'm going to go classic ice cream cake at the top.
That's fair.
Combination of two of my favorite things, really unique texture, just a modern marvel there. After that, man, I'd probably go Red Velvet over Angel Food Cake.
No.
Just because the consistency is so different. Angel Food Cake is really only cake in name. It's almost more of a pastry in my mind. It's really strange. So I like Angel Food Cake a lot, and Red Velvet is not my favorite flavor profile by any means, but more often than not, when I'm dealing with Red Velvet, I'm dealing with tried and true cake. With Angel Food Cake, I know it's just a very different one-off experience, and so for that reason, it falls a little behind for me. I'm sorry to offend your culture.
That's all right. I thought I could at least get a win over Red Velvet, though. God, my
cake is
Red Velvet.
All right, good stuff. Mike Golick Jr. awesome enough to give us some time today. Gojo and Golick weekday mornings from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. on DraftKings YouTube channel. And Mike, I know you get this all the time. Send us out with this. Working with your dad has to be pretty dang cool. Anyone who gets to work with their dad, that's pretty cool. But your dad, I think we would all love to work with your dad. What's that like, getting to continue your media journey and continuing to do a show with your dad after the legendary career he's had?
Yeah, cool and unique opportunity. Something we both got to do at ESPN for a little while towards the end of our tenures there, and weren't sure we'd ever get the chance to do again. So we appreciate DraftKings for giving us the chance and the opportunity to make that happen. And, to have someone, I always said I'll be – I've had plenty of co-hosts I've been fortunate to work with and ones that I'm really close with away from the microphone here, but none of them have ever wiped my butt. There's a different time under task with me and Dad. That means that, I know where he's going to go and he knows where I'm going to go in a way that's, like ESP, where it makes it so easy to go into a show and know when we get to a topic, hey, here I know is what he's going to want to hit on. But then you get all the extracurricular things. I think the hallmark of Mike and Mike for so many years was family life bleeding into the on-air version of the show. And now for us, we get to take those same conversations. We get to be a sports show where I always said I wanted people to be able to see themselves having debates and sports discussions with their parents, with their kids, and see some of that in us and bring that same stuff that we've been doing for years on couches in my house in front of a microphone. So it's been a really fun and gratifying opportunity. And especially, we grow up, and grow older. I'm 35 now. I've been away from home for a while. To get to spend 2 hours a day with my dad as we all have kind of gone off in our different directions in our family and are still very close, but just like life, you don't get to see each other as often. I get 2 hours a day where that's carved out, and that's pretty damn cool.
All right, Mike Golick Jr., awesome enough to give us some time. Mike, appreciate you. I look forward to having you on again sometime in the future, but thank you again for your time, and good luck to your Fighting Irish against Penn State this week.
Appreciate it. We'll have to have me back on. I thought you were going to ask me the Notre Dame conference question here and do the dance everyone always wants to do.
You heard that, huh? Yeah, fine. Yes. So, look, I saw the payout that Notre Dame just got for this little playoff run, and I've always been – you're Fighting Irish, need to be in a conference. All right, I've always said I'll just be honest. I thought the ACC bailing out your team a few years ago during COVID, I had a huge problem with that. They had leverage. They should have said, Notre Dame, we'll bail you out. Everyone went conference only. You should be in the ACC, but not just for one season. I would have locked them into a contract moving forward. I was a little bummed that the ACC gave them just the 1 year and then they got out. However, I saw that payout the other day. I'm done questioning Notre Dame. I'm starting to question Ohio State and a few other programs that have that same type of brand as Notre Dame. Why are you sharing money with the conference? That is sick money that Notre Dame does not have to split with anybody but themselves. I see both sides.
Yeah, it's one of those things I always said, if other teams could, they would. And if they can't, then that's not our problem. Notre Dame's always occupied a very unique part in all of this. And, I understand that. I mean, I'm sure that probably crossed the ACC's mind. And then there's reasons that they still don't do that, because any proximity or any association with Notre Dame is dollar signs for most of these people, whether that's television executives, the conference executives. They all understand what the game is there. And why would you rather ruin something that can still be valuable for you by trying to potentially ruffle feathers and do that elsewhere? I mean, I still think if Notre Dame ever was going to happen, it would probably end up being the Big Ten overall. And so if you're at the ACC, do you want to force that into reality any faster than you need to while you still have Notre Dame around in all of these other sports here? But yeah, the bottom line is, again, until it's financially or path to the playoff prohibitive for Notre Dame, there's no reason to go for them and share everyone else. When this thing ultimately converges, I call it football Pangea. We're going to get the super conference eventually, right? Everyone that was mad that 3 or 5 or 7 AC or SEC teams didn't make the playoff this year, you're going to get it when we get the super conference in a few seasons, because greed's the only thing that governs this. And so just wait till then, and Notre Dame will join the super conference. But until then, like I pointed to everyone this day, we're in a Final Four right now in the college football playoff, where a single conference champion is left in all of this. This is really what y'all wanted us to join a conference for, so that we could go and wind up in the same place that everyone else is right now with a bunch of other teams that didn't win their conference this year? It makes no sense. Notre Dame is wound up usually most years with an incredibly competitive schedule, which is usually the thing people always talk about. Notre Dame's schedule got easier when they submitted to 5 ACC games a year, depending on how that rotated. So I've never understood that, because the argument to me always ignored the reality that, with the exception of this year, Notre Dame genuinely has a pretty tough nationally ranked schedule that can go up toe-to-toe with most of what we see across conferences in college football.
Yeah, the irony about that 2020 season, too, was the fact that everyone got mad because Notre Dame's not in a conference, but they still made the 4-team college football playoff. Then they're in a conference for 1 year. They get to the conference championship game, lose that conference championship, and still get into the 4-team playoff that year. I think what we've learned is, although the committee tries to tell you whether it's 4 or 12, we got to value these conference championships, I don't think we value the conference championships as much now. So either way. Mike Golick Jr., what's that?
No. I would say this year we value conference championships a whole lot. Arizona State and Boise State were the 3 and 4 seeds this year. So we did value them to an extent. Yes, too much this season. So again, we're always we're a little bit early to the right side of history of valuing conference championships just right at Notre Dame. They are incredible opportunities for another data point, but that is really about all they actually are.
Mike Golick Jr., you the best, sir. Appreciate you. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, guys. See you.
Thank you.
All right, this is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wing AM in Dayton. We'll wrap up the radio side when we come back. All right, good stuff. And we are back off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wing AM in Dayton. Shout out to Mike Golick Jr. I wasn't expecting him to basically co-host the whole back hour of the show, but appreciate that. Fitzy gave us a lot of time yesterday. Appreciate both those guys. When
all due respect to Kinner, Golick's a little bit better co-host.
Yeah, I think so. Let's get Golick.
No, that's not true. Ask the chat. I bet no one will agree with you.
The chat loves them some Kinner.
The chat loves me some. Yeah, they love Kinner.
That's right.
Sorry, chat, don't worry. I am not going anywhere. We're not letting Golick Jr. take my spot. We would never do that to those in the chat. Exactly. I mean, come on. But appreciate his time nonetheless. Notre Dame, Penn State this week, and then Ohio State, Texas on Friday night. To set up the championship game. But yeah, which one, by the way, Texas, Ohio State, like what's the championship matchup? What's the best one for the network? Because I don't think you can go wrong. Even Texas isn't as good as Ohio State.
Notre Dame.
Yep.
I think.
Not even close. I think the closest game might be Penn State, Ohio State, though.
I agree. I said I think, and maybe it'll come back to bite me. I didn't want to say it on air until we got to that point, and Ohio State has to beat Texas first. But I think if Ohio State plays Notre Dame, they're going to win that game relatively easily. Ohio State's been able to handle the run against every single team other than Michigan, and Notre Dame, I just don't believe in Riley Leonard's arm if you force him to throw. I think they're going to be just fine against Penn State. I think that's going to be an incredible game. Right now I'm leaning a little bit Penn State, but I could talk myself back into Notre Dame pretty easily. I think that's going to be a great one. I don't think the other one's going to be very good.
I agree.
I just don't. I think Ohio State's defense is playing at a level that a lot of people expected them to play at all year, and they finally are there, and they really have been there since the Oregon game the first time around. And the offense playing like this, running the ball like this, stretching the field like this, I just don't know if anyone can beat them. But the thing that rolls around if you play Penn State again, you got to beat a team twice. And that's really, really hard to do in college football. You'd have to beat Penn State twice, and James Franklin would be riding high off 3 straight playoff wins. But again, the big thing saving Ohio State so far this playoff, in my opinion, is they've never taken their foot off the gas. I think that's what the Michigan loss has allowed them to do, allowed Ryan Day to do. Never take your foot off the gas, just kill these teams. Absolutely beat them into the turf and just end the game all the way at 100 miles per hour. There's no reason to dial it back at any point in time, and I think we're going to see the same thing against Texas. I've seen a lot of sentiment in the chat that people are more worried about Arch. If Quinn starts slow and Arch Manning was to come in and get some reps, some Ohio State fans are worried about that. That's been my take all year long. I think Texas is a much, much scarier team with Arch Manning playing quarterback than Quinn Ewers. I disagree for this game. For this game, Arch Manning does not scare me because it would be his first playoff experience. It would be he got in against Georgia for a little bit in the regular season, didn't look good. And now you're going to throw him in the fire against potentially the best defense in college football. I don't think that would go well for Arch or Texas. Nothing against him as a player or a prospect or how he's going to be next year, but giving you your first taste of college action against this Ohio State defense when they're playing at this level, I don't think that'll go well. So I'm much more worried about playing Quinn, even though I don't think he's a world-beating quarterback. He did enough to beat a good Arizona State team in a close game, making a hell of a throw on 4th down in overtime. So he still has that in there. I think that one has a much smaller chance of being a close game than Notre Dame Penn State, though.
Yeah, like the brands of like Ohio State Notre Dame, I think that would be a very popular national championship game. But I think Texas Notre Dame would be the better national championship game because Texas brand is just as big, right, or right up there as far as being a huge brand. You'd get a better game. Texas against Notre Dame, you get the two huge brands in a competitive game. I don't think I'm being a Buckeye homer here because I think Mike Golick Jr. alluded to that too. The buzzsaw that is Ohio State
Fitz
against
said it
Tennessee.
yesterday, too. Everyone's agreed.
I think that Ohio State's going to blow out anyone that they play moving forward. I'll be surprised if the Vegas line of 6 Ohio State's favored by. I'll be surprised if it sticks to that being a close game like that. I think Ohio State
now.
It's 5.5 now?
It went the other way.
What are we missing?
I don't know, but I got it at 6 and I got it
What does Vegas know?
I don't know, but what Vegas doesn't know, a wrong hand to cut off, but pat on the back for Jacob. First round, I bet Ohio State Notre Dame exact matchup in the national championship.
What are the odds on that?
It was plus like 900 or something like that.
Hell yeah!
So we're looking all right. We're looking all right, sitting pretty. Both favorites. Do you think Notre Dame will close as the favorite in that game?
Yes, I do. I think money will start coming in on Notre Dame at some point.
Because it opened as 1, it got to 2, and now it's back down to 1.5.
Yep. I do think Notre Dame's still going to finish as favorites.
I agree.
Notre Dame's good, and it comes down to what's the kid's name again? Defensive player
Abdul Carter.
It comes down to him. I mean, he's playing, right? I mean,
I watch Star Wars, so I know what he's tweeting. And he either doesn't know what happens in Star Wars or he's just lying. Because he's saying he's going to come back.
I think he'll play.
I do too, and I think that's a big deal.
We had so Gavin Lux, the newest addition to the Reds, was on the Reds Hot Stove League show last night. We're going to get to all that on tomorrow's show. More. We got more time with Gola Jr. today than anticipated, so that's a good thing. So we'll push some of the stuff back for today.
There was an Abdul Carter update while we're live. I was just looking it up to see, but it rolled in while we were doing the show earlier this morning. James Franklin gave an update on Carter's availability for the game, and he said, we anticipate Abdul playing. He's going to do everything possible to play, but it will be a game-time decision. So I would assume that just means he's not going to practice. You know how good Abdul Carter is. You can't list him as going to play if he doesn't practice, so I would assume game-time decision, and then they'll just let the sticks roll out there when the game starts.
So there's that. Any closing remarks on the radio side?
I wanted to bring this up because Mouse Cop's been on it in the chat. Shout out to the YouTube chat. The Oklahoma City Thunder are taking on the Cavaliers tonight in Cleveland, 7 p.m. It is the first time in NBA history where a 15-game winning streak will be playing a 10-game winning streak. Yeah. Thunder on a 15-gamer and the Cavs on a 10-gamer.
First interconference game in NBA history between teams with a winning record or winning percentage of 850 or higher. It's the second time in NBA history that multiple teams have won at least 30 of their first 35 games and are playing each other. The Thunder and Cavaliers are on pace for the fourth and fifth highest point differentials of all time this year. This is statistically the best regular season NBA game of all time at this point in the season. When you get more data points later, obviously we've had 1 and 2 seeds play each other down the line and fight for seeding and all that stuff. But at this point in the season, in early January, this is statistically the best regular season NBA game of all time.
You think the Cavs, the deadline's still, actually, it's not that far off. It is January. I still feel like there's I mean, like it's the Cavs do anything at the deadline. I mean, you're rolling. You don't want to mess with anything right now, but like for depth pieces, like you see the Jimmy Butler stuff out there, you see all these bigger names available. I kind of don't mess with it. I kind of like what they have, and you want to keep some of that control of the roster moving forward. You don't want to gut it to bring in a star thinking that's what's going to push you over the top. That's what Milwaukee did with Dame Lillard, and that has not worked at all. No,
it hasn't.
I'd be a little hesitant if I'm the Cavs to make any major move at the deadline outside of just some depth pieces.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, our Cavs, we're all huge Cavs fans, and
Casey
I just don't. I don't really have a list on top of my head for I'm blanking on trade targets for the Cavs.
I forgot my Cavs hoodie. That's the only thing.
You should have. You should have worn it. It's a big day.
Or my Thunder hood.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm showing my support for the Cavs by wearing my Thunder hoodie. I think that would, work in reverse.
I think that would help. I think that would help.
As far as the radio goes, that wraps it up for us. Appreciate everyone who tuned in and hung out with us here today. Shout out to Keegan Nicholson again with the Bearcat Journal, giving us some time. Earlier, the Bearcats had such a big start to the season. They get that top 25 win over Dayton, and then things have kind of, slowed down a bit since then. And he gave us some insight on the Bearcats and their ongoing season. Again, it doesn't get any easier, but we talk about how dominant the SEC is. The Big 12 is a very tough college basketball conference. Doesn't get any easier for the Bearcats moving forward as far as that goes. Shout out to Mike Gola Jr., who got with us, gave us some time. We talked college football, obviously, but interesting stuff on the Bengals that I know we'll dive more into later when he talked about Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen and Joe Burrow. And then cakes. He ranked his cakes. That was a big one. Yeah, that's
I'm not going to lie. That was a bad ranking because Angel Food.
He got it right.
Angel Food is one.
Terrible.
Angel Food is great.
Ice cream cake is you ruined it by putting that in there because it's in a category of its own.
I agree, but
you so distantly the best cake.
I thought Angel Food would have a chance.
Came third. It seemed like a distant third.
Yeah, it was.
I think ice cream cake though.
I put red velvet in just
to at least get it second.
It just didn't work.
Are you cake over pie? I'm pie over cake.
I think I'm pie over cake too.
I am for sure.
I think ice cream cake is cheating. You can't just shape ice cream in the shape of a cake and then just call it cake. That's why I can't put it in the cake category.
That's fair.
And by the way, if it is
cheesecake, what about that? Because it's not really cake.
But is cheesecake a cake? I know it's cake, but is it or more of a pie? I consider cheesecake, even though it says cake, to be more of a pie than a cake.
Okay.
It is more of a pie.
It is definitely more of a pie. We're going to end this show with cheesecake is actually a pie being the take of the day. Thanks for joining us, Mike Golick.
Oh, boy.
This has been Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers.
good vibes for the final YouTube segment, as
Yes.
the chat would say. Good vibes.
Good vibes.
And I'll ruin them a little bit. The NFLPA voting process has concluded, and their third annual All-Pro team came out. Now, important to note in this kind of thing that the rules are a little weird. You can't vote for yourself.
Okay.
And you can't vote for your teammates.
Okay.
So no Bengal could vote for a Bengal.
Okay.
And as these rosters are rolling out, the Bengals have 2 All-Pros on the NFLPA list. Jamar Chase, the leading wide receiver, and Trey Hendrickson, the second overall edge rusher. Joe Burrow finished third in NFLPA All-Pro quarterback voting behind Lamar Jackson, who won the honor, and then Josh Allen, who finished second. Betting odds for the AP All-Pros, Josh Allen is a pretty distant lead for first-team All-Pro. So if these are telling you anything, Burrow's not going to sneak in there on the All-Pro list, which is a shame. And we talked about the MVP race for a while and how wins do have a lot of effect on that, but they're not necessarily supposed to on the All-Pro team. That's supposed to be an individual award for how you played during the season. And if you look at the numbers, we can all agree that Joe Burrow was, if not the best, certainly the second best quarterback in football this year, and he's not going to be a first or second team All-Pro based on what we're seeing so far.
Only 4 interceptions for Lamar Jackson's absolutely insane.
He did have more turnovers than Joe.
He did.
Everyone always says, oh, Lamar, 4 interceptions. That's so good. He runs the ball a lot. He fumbles a lot.
Okay, that's fair. That's a fair point. Even with Joe Burrow had some fumbles this year too, though.
I saw that Joe had less total turnovers than Lamar.
I'll check.
I'm pulling it up right now.
I was going to say 9 interceptions for Burrow.
Like 2 fumbles.
I think he had more than 2, no?
Well, it depends on what they
ESPN,
credit to him.
Yeah, ESPN credits him with only 2 fumbles this year.
Okay, interesting. All right. And you're saying Lamar had 7 lost fumbles?
That's what I'm pulling up right now.
Interesting. By the way, what did you guys think about Golick's response to that?
Lamar had 8 lost fumbles.
Are you serious?
Or 8 fumbles.
Man,
yes. I don't know how many of them were lost, but yeah, 8 fumbles.
Did you agree that you would take Joe Burrow third out of those 3 if you were rebuilding a franchise? I would take Josh 1. I think I might take Lamar 1, and that's the running back thing is so silly to me because what he's able to do to extend a play is a superpower that not any quarterback has.
Lamar's incredible.
He's fantastic. He's absolutely. We'll see what he does in the playoffs this year because I'd argue there's a lot of pressure on the Baltimore Ravens this postseason to get something done.
The most, right?
Yeah.
Bills are got to be close.
Bills
right?
was a rebuild.
Bills
You're
are
right.
yeah.
They
Bills
weren't
are
supposed to be
second
here.
though.
I think Josh is second.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like organizationally for the Bills, they weren't supposed to be here. This was not supposed to be a year where they were the 2 seed and going to be a Super Bowl favorite. So. Josh, absolutely. But I think organizationally, as crazy as it sounds, the Bills are kind of playing with house money.
Yeah. I mean, you look at, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but there's a graphic of Ravens All-Pros not All-Pros, but Pro Bowlers. I think even All-Pros too. Over the last 5 years, it's like 45 Pro Bowlers, something like that. And Joe Burrow has like 9 or something like that in the last 5 years. So, like, they have had players surrounding Lamar. They have built a team around Lamar to succeed, and they don't succeed. I do agree that they are the number 1. And then Josh Allen just not winning something, I think that's number 2.
Yeah. Last year, the Ravens forgot to run the ball against the Chiefs, and everyone said that they would have potentially won a Super Bowl if they had chose to run the ball. And then in the offseason, they go get Derrick Henry. So that's kind of where I'm at with them. It's like, what else can you fix if you're the Ravens? You went out and got the best running back on the market. If Zay Flowers is hurt, I guess there's a built-in excuse. He's your number 1 wide receiver, Pro Bowler. But Rashad Bateman's played really well down the stretch. I think they're coming on. The defense has been awesome through the last 5 or 6 weeks, towards the top of the league. So I just think everything's coming together perfectly for Baltimore. And I know it's crazy because they had the 1 seed last year, home field advantage last year, but I think there's way more pressure on them this year, especially if Lamar's able to win his 3rd MVP.
I just think that, especially if you look at John Harbaugh, I think John Harbaugh, what he's been able to do in Baltimore, you build one of the best franchises in professional sports, but the postseason success with Lamar Jackson just hasn't been there, and I do think that For him personally, I'd imagine this is a massive year because I bet like these AFC North coaches, I bet we're going to start seeing a change at some point. Mike Tomlin's not going to stay in Pittsburgh with another first-round loss continually every single year. I'd imagine Mike Tomlin's going to be gone, and if the Ravens bounce early, I might imagine John Harbaugh starts to think about leaving. I know he's got a great.
I think John Harbaugh has the hottest seat in the AFC North.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think
by a pretty wide margin.
I think there's just a lot of. I think there's a lot of pressure on him to get it done with Lamar Jackson.
He's also distantly the worst challenging coach in the entire NFL.
Yeah.
Distantly. He hasn't won over 50% of his challenges in a season. I think it's his entire Ravens tenure.
That's so funny.
It's unbelievable. People in Baltimore and Ravens fans are a lot less happy with Harbaugh than everyone on the outside. The other 31 teams think that he's towards the top and one of the safer coaches. I don't get the sense that it's the same in Baltimore. I think if he doesn't win for another year or two, he could be on the way out. And obviously that's relatively the same timeline as Zach Taylor's contract as well.
We'll see. These playoffs are a little bit interesting to me, given the storylines on the AFC side. I do think I'm going to say an NFC team wins the Super Bowl.
You can get them at plus money.
I know. I like the Eagles and the Lions. I like the Eagles and the Lions. The Chiefs, there's just something. I say it every year, and we can't do it every year, but there's something about the Chiefs I don't trust. The Bills, I think they're good. I think Josh Allen's incredible, but are they going to be able to beat Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs? I don't think so. And then it comes down to the Ravens. If the Ravens ever had a chance to get to a Super Bowl, it was this year.
Absolutely. I agree. I do think that, the NFC, I was out on the Lions because of the injuries.
Yeah.
And through the last couple of weeks of the season, they've more than proven that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And they get David Montgomery back after the bye, and Anzalone came back for that Vikings game. Hayden Hutchinson, though I don't believe him. This is an Aaron Rodgers thing again, right? He's not playing if they make the Super Bowl.
No way. Dude, there's no way.
He has 3 plates in his leg.
There's no way.
Like I don't know, but even if they're playing in the NFC Championship and the players have a mindset of we win this game, we get Hutch back, whether it's true or not, the Lions might just be a team of destiny. It really feels like. And Jahmyr Gibbs, man, I cannot watch that clip of him saying that if the Lions didn't take him, he'd end up in Cincinnati. I can't watch it. It makes me ill when I watch him score 4 touchdowns in primetime playoff football, and he could have been a Bengal. I love Chase Brown, but Jahmyr Gibbs, man, what a player.
Did he score 3 in the week before?
He's been unbelievable since David Montgomery got hurt. Unbelievable.
It's like he could be a RB1 too.
In the first half of that game, the Lions and Ben Johnson, they were like, all right, we usually do Montgomery and Gibbs. We're going to go Gibbs and Craig Reynolds, and we'll do Craig Reynolds had like 4 carries for like 12 yards at the beginning of that game, and Ben Johnson, light bulb, he was like, wait a second. We don't have to give it to anyone else. We can just give it to Jahmyr Gibbs. And it was worked great.
He has 1,400 yards and 16 rushing touchdowns while playing half the snaps.
I'm pretty sure he has 20 touchdowns. He's over 4 receiving touchdowns.
I was going to say, he has 20 touchdowns, including the receiving, 16 rushing. If he played the whole year, he has 2,800 yards and 32 touchdowns.
I don't know if it's exact 50-50.
I think it's 50-50. I'm going 50-50 on that.
He would certainly push 2,000.
3,000 yards.
He'd be in that Saquon, Derrick Henry conversation as best running back in the league if he's not already. I mean, the fact that both these guys are viewed as top 10, top 15 running backs in football when they're playing on the same team, stealing carries from each other, that's incredibly impressive. We do have a Bengals dream dying in front of our very eyes.
Okay.
Some breaking news rolling in. The dream I think all of us had. Craig Sandlin and myself talked about it right after Lou Anarumo was fired. I haven't got a chance to talk to Casey yet, but I assume he aligns with us here. The dream defensive coordinator in Cincinnati, Robert Saleh, one of the best names on the market for sure. He has not been hired yet, but the Niners said that they don't need an interview. They're going to offer him the DC job.
Really?
He was their DC 2 years ago, 3 years ago. So it makes a ton of sense. But if you have the option to come to Cincinnati or go back to where you're comfortable in San Francisco with Kyle Shanahan and Nick Bosa and all the guys you coached before, I think that he's probably going to San Francisco.
Niners are in a pretty bad spot coming into next season.
They are. They got a lot of money problems. They got a lot of money problems for sure. But we'll see what happens. They already announced that they're going to keep GM and Shanahan. So at least a little level of congruity going into next year. Howdy, Reed.
Oh, hey.
How are we doing?
Hey, good. How are you?
I'm doing great.
What's that hat? What's that hat? I like that hat.
It's my brother's college team.
That's a cool hat.
Love that hat.
It's a really nice hat.
What's the mascot?
They're Jets. They're the Jets.
That's a much better jet than the actual Jets.
The New York Jets have one of the worst jet logos.
A horrible jet logo.
I don't like how you said actual Jets, as if like the Newman Jets were a make-believe team.
Well,
I mean, they're D2. They're in the NCAA. Come on.
Listen, you can't just say like they're the actual Jets. There's one Jets. There's one professional Jets.
No, there's not.
No, the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah.
Well, that'll do it for Off the Bench. We'll see you guys at Box Lunch.
They really don't count. Box
Canada.
Lunch.
Well, Canada, the 51st state.
That's right, baby. Gulf of America. Gulf of America.
Are we just going to forget about all the provinces up there? Just that entire area is one state?
Well, we're going 52. Canada and Puerto Rico. There we go. Keeping an even number.
Fair enough.
And Greenland.
Greenland.
Panama.
All of them. Right. Shout out Jimmy Carter. R.I.P.
That has been Off the Bench. We'll see you guys on Box Lunch in a bit.